Hey, what's up guys? Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. Here in today's video, I want to talk about how to approach learning a solo that you may not currently be good enough to play. So maybe there's a solo that you want to play, it's slightly above your current skill level, or maybe it's way above your current skill level. We're going to come up with an approach, and we are going to use technology to essentially figure out exactly what we need to do to learn the solo. We're going to work our way through the solo. We're going to figure out the points that we can currently play, and then we're going to figure out the points that we cannot currently play, and then we're going to figure out what exactly we're going to do about those spots that we cannot currently play. I actually just recently learned a solo that is above my current skill level, and I played it. I got it up to track speed, which is 104 BPM. I'm going to play it for you in a second. But I didn't actually play the solo correctly. I did exactly what I'm talking about here. I dissected the solo. I figured out which parts I could play perfectly. I figured out which parts I couldn't play perfectly, and then I had to figure out what I was going to do about those parts. And I spent about 3 weeks on this solo, so let me just play that for you real quick, and then I'm going to kind of walk you through each of the parts and kind of give you my process. Alright, so track speed of that solo was 104 BPM, and that's exactly what I just played for you right there. The thing is, when I played that, I didn't actually play it correctly. There's 2 spots in particular that I had to come up with workarounds for because I wasn't physically capable of playing them the way that they were actually played on the album at track speed. So, first of all, we need to know how to identify these spots, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Second of all, we need to figure out how to determine the exact BPM point at which your technique starts to fall apart, which I have determined, and I'm going to show you how to do that also in this video. But then, once you determine that, once you figure out, okay, 92 BPMs is where my playing falls apart, that's the spot that I need to get past. Once you're there, you have 2 options. Number one, you can either take the reasonable time frame route, which is what I chose to do, and just say, okay, I want to get this solo down at track speed. It's 104 BPM. I have these 2 spots that are above my current skill level. Those are the spots I need to develop workarounds for. That way I can get this solo ready at performance level at track speed in a reasonable time frame. That's option number one. Option number 2 is drill, 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 drill. Don't stop, grind out 1 BPM at a time, even if it takes a week or 2 weeks or a month just to get 1 additional BPM, and keep grinding and grinding and grinding until you get it down perfectly using the actual techniques of the solo. That way it takes longer. It's probably the better thing to do for the long run, but option 1 gets it done in a reasonable time frame. So the very first thing that I always like to do is to make a backing track and put it inside of a DAW. So sometimes you'll be able to find a backing track for the song that you're working on. Sometimes you're going to have to make a backing track for it. I've made plenty of videos on both ways of doing this. I'll link you to some of those below. The important thing is that once you get it into a DAW, once you have your backing track of the solo that you're trying to learn inside of a DAW, this is going to be the thing that allows you to determine precisely where you're at. This is going to be the thing that you're like, okay, I'm at 92 BPM, I can play this solo perfectly, no problem, but once I crank it up to 93 BPM, then it falls apart. You know your specific point that you need to get past. So once you have a blank project open in your DAW, the very first thing that you're going to want to do is to set the project tempo to the actual track speed of the solo that you're trying to learn. Now, you can very, very easily determine what this is just by doing a quick Google search. The song that I'm working on for this video is called Every Time I Die. Quick Google search tells me that this is at 104 BPM. So that's what I set my project tempo to in Reaper. You want to make sure that you do this first before you add any tracks into your project. The reason being is you want to first design the backing track at track speed, and then you can slow it down as much as you'd like, slowly working your way back up. All right, so once you have a new project opened up in your DAW and you have the project tempo set to the track speed, you can then start to add some tracks in. You can, not always, but you can sometimes find backing tracks already made. There's people out there that, just for fun, they make up backing tracks. So I was able to find one on YouTube for this song. So if you want to take the audio from any YouTube video and then convert it into an MP3 file, the program that I use to do that is called Media Human. So it's a free program. I've been using it for years. I'm sure there's other programs that do similar things. This is just the one that I use. It's very, very easy. All you need to do is to just copy the link of the YouTube video that you're trying to get the audio from, paste it into your Media Human program, and then just press the button, and then it just converts it into an MP3 file. Now, I don't know if this person that made this backing track made it at exactly 104 BPM, but it doesn't matter because my project tempo is set to 104 BPM. Therefore, I'm just going to drag this track in, and I'm going to put it in there, and the track is whatever the track is. Now, every time I slow down the BPM of my project tempo, it's going to slow down the backing track accordingly. All right, so you can see there that once you have a backing track in your DAW, you can then slow it down, and then you can just use the BPM of the project tempo. That's going to be your ultimate guide to let you know how fast you are. Now, the backing track alone was a little empty to me, so I just wanted to add a rhythm guitar part, just some heavy distorted power chord just to kind of fill it up a little bit. So I recorded the same rhythm guitar part twice. I put one in the left speaker and one in the right speaker, and that just kind of filled out my rhythm section for me. Next thing is you want to figure out the solo exactly as you're going to play it. Note for note, you want to figure out exactly what fingers you'll be using. You want to figure out exactly where the transition points are from one spot to the next. Every single thing about the solo, you want to figure it out exactly as is, and you want to do so at a much, much slower speed. So the next thing is determining the spots of the solo that you are unable to play. And for me, there was two of those. So one of them was At 92 BPM, I was able to play it perfectly using alternate picking, but then once I got to 93 BPM, that's when it fell apart. That's when my hand synchronization started to fall apart. So that was one of my 2 sticking points. So check it out at 92 BPM. And then listen to it fall apart at 93 BPM. The other part of the solo where I fell apart at was at around 82, 83 BPM. So listen to me play it using alternate picking at 82 BPM. But then when I play the same thing at 83 BPM, you can hear that my hand synchronization starts to fall apart. Alright, so I've identified my 2 sticking points of the solo. So the rest of the solo I was capable of playing at 104 BPM. It was just these 2 parts that I needed to figure out what to do with. Alright, so before we can come up with a solution to what we're going to do about these sticking points, you first need to make sure that you understand subdivisions. Subdivisions are huge. I would say that it's probably the #1 most important thing when it comes to lead guitar playing, or pretty much any musical instrument for that matter. Subdivisions are everything. It doesn't matter if the person listening doesn't know anything about music or not. Our brains are just wired to hear subdivisions. So when a guitar player or a piano player or a saxophone player or any type of musician is playing some kind of fast runs, some fast solos, and they're dead on all their subdivisions, we're going to hear it and we're going to be like, wow, that person's really, really good. They're playing so tight, so you can just hear it, you know? But when they're not dead on their subdivisions, when they're kind of sloppy with it, maybe they don't practice to backing tracks or they don't practice to metronomes, whatever, they're just kind of sloppy with their subdivisions, we're going to hear that as sloppy playing. So when it comes to fast soloing, there's 2 specific types of subdivisions that are going to come up all the time. These 2 subdivisions are very different from one another, but it's very, very important to know what they are and know exactly what they sound like, and that way you can know what the sound is that you're aiming for. So the 2 types of subdivisions are 16th notes and sextuplets. Sextuplets are also sometimes referred to as 16th note triplets. So 16th notes means that there's 4 notes for every click of the metronome. Sextuplets means that there's 6 notes for every click of the metronome. So if our metronome is set at a speed of 104 BPM, which is like click, 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 let's just say that's the metronome speed. I don't know if that's 104, but each click is a quarter note, right? Click, 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 click. So if you're a lead guitar player and you want to play 16th notes to this metronome speed, then you're going to be hitting 4 notes for every click of the metronome. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a da 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 da. So the majority of the solo is played using 16th notes. Now, because the tempo of this song is at 104 BPM, these 16th notes are doable for me. If the tempo of this song was at like, I don't know, 130 BPM or something like that, then those 16th notes may not be quite as easy for me anymore. But at a speed of 104 BPM, 16th notes are manageable for me. So the reason that I struggled at those 2 spots of the solo is because that's when it switched up to sextuplet speed. So that doesn't mean that the track tempo switched. The track tempo remained constant the entire time. It's 104 BPM. The 104, that represents the quarter notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the metronome. That's staying constant. A lot of the solo was 16th notes. So 16th notes at that moderate tempo, that was doable for me. When it switched up to sextuplets, that's when it got hard. All right. So again, we're still at 1, 2, 3, 4. But instead of just fitting 4 notes in for each click of the metronome, it now fits 6 notes in. So instead of going da 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 da, it's going da 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 da. It's hard for me to even say it, you know. The reason I say da 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 da. So that's 6. I always say da 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 da. but that lets me think what sextuplet sounds like, right? So even at a moderate tempo of 104 BPM, playing 6 notes per metronome click is challenging. Alright, so I'll just show you the 2 workarounds that I came up with for the 2 spots that had the sextuplet speed that I wasn't able to play using strictly alternate picking, and I'll show you what I did instead. So the first one was played right up here in pentatonic position number 1 between frets 17 and 20. This would be your pentatonic position 1. So the actual way that it's played is a pull off from 20 to 17 on the high E string, and then a pick from 2017, and then pick 1917. So it's supposed to go. Once it gets up to 93 or something like that, it just falls apart for me. Alright, so my workaround for it was I just put my first finger right across there on the 17th fret, and I just legatoed it. Alright, something like that. So it doesn't have that same sound and powerful effect that strictly alternate picking does, but it was still, the subdivisions were pretty close. You know, the subdivisions were pretty close. I was hitting the correct notes, so it got me through the fast parts at performance speed, at track speed. So the second part for me was a little tricky, and the reason is because this is actually a keyboard solo. So if you listen to Children of Bodom, then you know that the solo that I played, the first part is a guitar solo, the second half is actually a keyboard solo. I just played it on the guitar. I heard one other person do that. Most of the people that I heard cover this solo, they just do the guitar part and they stop it there. I heard one other person do the guitar followed by the keyboard part, and this guy plays this solo amazingly. Props to this guy for doing such a great job at this solo. But I wanted to essentially just steal a little bit that he did for the keyboard part, you know? I figured out some of the keyboard part myself, but when it starts getting fast and the keyboard's all over the place, I'm like, how am I going to figure that out? So I watched this guy's video, I watched what he did, and I was like, yep, I want to do it just like that. So I did the same thing to his video. What I did is I ripped the audio using Media Human, as I already showed you there. I then took the audio from his guitar solo, I put it into Reaper. Alright, so I did all that, and I figured out that this is exactly what this guy was playing. So he played it using finger 1, 3, and 4, which is very, very impressive. So that's what he was actually playing. He was playing it using finger 1, 3, and 4, which, for a lot of guitar players, you probably know that fingers 3 and 4 are not quite as fast as fingers 1, 2, and 3. That's why a lot of guitar players, myself included, when it comes to that faster stuff, we tend to drop the pinky. Is that correct technique? No, I don't believe so. I believe it's correct technique to use your pinky. But lots of great guitar players, Randy Rhoads, Alexi Laiho himself, the guy who wrote this solo, they all do they use their first 3 fingers more often than using their pinky. So if they're doing it, I'm going to give myself a pass to do it too. So instead of doing that, I first made the switch to just using my first 3 fingers. So I did use my pinky once I got to the 15th fret of the B string. So I did switch it up to my pinky there, but I found out that using primarily those 3 fingers allowed me to get a little bit more speed. But still not enough speed. I still wasn't able to sync my hands up and get that down within a reasonable time frame, but I quickly discovered that just dropping the alternate picking and just going legato again was my solution. So I'm just going to give you those Guitar Pro clips real quick. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask. Other than that, thanks for watching. See you next time.